What's in a title? And why would a couple who left royal life behind still answer to Duke and Duchess? These questions sit at the heart of The Guardian's columnist Arwa Mahdawi's recent piece, in which she scolds Meghan Sussex and Prince Harry for clinging to their titles and accepting a humanitarian award. Mahdawi's claim Meghan, in quotes, won't let us commoners forget she's the Duchess of Sussex, and accuses the pair of being, in quotes here again, obsessed with titles and accolades, without doing the hard work to earn them, she says. It's a searing soundbite of an article, the kind that travels fast on social media. But does it hold up under scrutiny? Now, we'll fact check and contextualize Mahdawi's assertions. We'll explore the legal nature of royal titles and who actually controls their use. And we'll highlight what the Sussex's Archewell Foundation has really been doing behind the scenes, including the much lauded Parents Network initiative. We'll put the infamous Harper Bazaar quote in full context to show how framing can mislead. We'll also examine Mahdawi's pattern of commentary, opinion on Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, asking whether her columns, her opinion pieces, display a, how do I put this, one sided bias. Along the way, we'll compare how other royals, like Andrew Mountbatten, Prince Andrew, and Sarah Ferguson, kept their titles with far less fanfare. We'll confront the, well, uncomfortable questions of race. Ooh, who wants to talk about that? And class. And selective outrage that swirls around the British media coverage of Meghan. The goal isn't to portray Harry and Meghan as perfect. They're not. No one is. But to ensure the criticism levied against them are fair and fact based. So let's shift through the narratives and separate opinion from reality. Welcome. This is Majesty Sussex Report, and I'm Antonio. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time here with us.
We rise, we shine, we rise, we shine. Magic rising, strong and free, voices proud in harmony, true forever, crown and gold. Our story lives, it can't be told. We rise, we shine, we shine.
The Guardian. Title: Why on earth would Meghan still want to be called the Duchess of Sussex? Opinion by Arwa Mahdawi. She and her husband seem keen on their titles and accolades, and less enthusiastic about putting in the work that ordinarily goes with them. Meghan may be a resident of Montecito, California, but she is still the Duchess of Sussex, and she won't let us commoners forget it. Despite their highly publicized separation from the royal family, Harry and Meghan remain extraordinarily loyal to their fancy titles. They have been asked before why they cling to their aristocratic honorifics and shrugged off the question. What difference would that make? Harry told Anderson Cooper in 2023 when asked why the couple didn't renounce the titles. The difference, Mr. Duke, is that people might stop wondering why you and Megs are so keen on reminding everyone that you're royals while living in a country that famously has no monarchy. And this question isn't going away. It keeps popping up and it's back in the news now thanks to a Harper's Bazaar cover story on Meghan. After years of being subsumed by other people's narratives, the Duchess of Sussex is ready to author her own next chapter, the profile proclaims, and then a little detail that has taken the internet by storm. The magazine writer enters the luxury New York home of one of Meghan's friends and notes. The house manager announces, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, even though we appear to be the only other two people in the house. The woman so keen on authoring her own next chapter apparently continues to insist on being called by a title she received via marriage from an institution she seems to disdain. Before all the Meghan fans come rushing in ready to fight, yes, the Duchess was given a terrible time by the royals and the British press. But two things can be true at once. One can acknowledge that Meghan was treated poorly while also noting that she and Harry seem awfully keen to enjoy all the privileges of royalty without many of the responsibilities. This seems to be a theme with the Sussexes. The Harper's Bazaar profile explains the reason Meghan was at her friend's New York pad for that interview was that she and Harry were in the city to receive the Humanitarians of the Year award from a mental health not-for-profit organization. Have the pair done good work raising awareness about important issues? Sure. Do they deserve to be known as Humanitarians of the Year when there are large numbers of underpaid and underappreciated humanitarian workers risking their lives in war zones? No, they don't. And this is why so many people have a problem with the Sussexes, because they seem obsessed with titles and accolades without putting in the grunt work that normally goes along with them. I can think of a few words for people like that, and it's not Duchess or Duke. Arwa Mahdawi is a Guardian columnist.
Mahdawi ridicules Harry and Meghan for remaining extraordinarily loyal to their fancy titles, noting that when Harry was asked in a 2023 interview why they don't renounce their Duke and Duchess titles, he shrugged, "What difference would that make?" Mahdawi retorts that dropping the titles would make a big difference, implying it would show integrity and stop them from reminding everyone that you're royals. This argument might sound straightforward, but it ignores how royal titles actually work. Royal titles are not like nicknames you can casually discard. They are legal creations of the monarchy. Prince Harry's title, the Duke of Sussex, was a gift conferred by Queen Elizabeth II upon his marriage. Neither Harry nor Meghan can unilaterally abolish the dukedom. Only the monarch, or an act of parliament, could do that. In fact, even if Harry stopped using Duke of Sussex, he would legally remain one. To formally remove a peerage title like a dukedom would require an act of parliament, a drastic measure that hasn't been taken against a senior royal in over a century. This is precisely why, despite enormous public scandal, Prince Andrew was not strictly stripped of his Duke of York title. In late 2025, under pressure, Andrew agreed he would no longer use his royal styles and honors, but crucially, he still retains the title Duke of York, along with Earl of Inverness and Baron Killyleagh, even as they lie dormant. The palace stopped short of fully revoking his dukedom because doing so formally would be unprecedented and require airing all the dirty laundry in Parliament. It's telling that even Prince Andrew, who was disgraced by a sexual assault lawsuit and deeply damaging associations, quietly kept his ducal title until he voluntarily stepped back from using it after discussion with the king in 2025. No act of Parliament was pursued. In light of this, the outrage that Harry and Meghan didn't volunteer to annihilate their own titles seems misplaced. The Sussexes actually did relinquish something significant, their use of HRH, His or Her Royal Highness styles. They legally retain the styles of HRH, but agreed not to use it publicly or for business. They no longer represent the Queen, now King, or receive public funds. Harry has described sending written proposals to his father from Canada in January 2020, outlining options for a new role and stating that, if necessary, they were willing to relinquish their Sussex titles to secure peace and safety for their family. That was rejected, but Duke and Duchess remained as formal designations with the clear approval of the monarch at the time. If the palace truly felt their titles were an abomination, it had tools, however blunt, to seek their removal, yet it chose not to. Why? Perhaps because, as Harry hinted, giving them up wouldn't meaningfully change anything about the couple's status or the public discourse. It would be pure symbolism. Harry's rhetorical, "What difference would that make?" may strike some as flippant, but consider his point. Even without titles, Harry would still be Prince Harry by birth. Meghan would still be internationally known. Tabloids would likely still hound them, and critics would still accuse them of trading on royal connections, the same way Diana was forever Princess Diana to the public, even after losing her HRH. In other words, dropping Duke and Duchess might please the couple's harshest detractors for a day, but it wouldn't magically erase their profile or silence debate. It's also worth noting Harry's full quote to Anderson Cooper in that 2023 interview. When pressed on the title issue, Harry explained that, in his view, keeping or dropping his title didn't solve the problems at hand: accountability and reform in the monarchy and media. The titles to him were beside the point. One can agree or disagree, but it's a far cry from the picture of a man extraordinarily loyal to an honorific just for ego's sake. In short, Mahdawi's quip that the Sussexes cling to titles without acknowledging these nuances is oversimplified. It feeds the perception that Harry and Meghan are hypocrites by choice, when in fact they're following a playbook written by the monarchy. If one wants to be angry about them still being Duke and Duchess, it might be worth aiming some ire at Buckingham Palace for not taking the extraordinary step of removing those titles. But interestingly, we don't see many op-eds demanding that. Perhaps because, as palace sources themselves have suggested, formally stripping titles would cause more trouble than it's worth. Mahdawi allows that Harry and Meghan have done good work raising awareness about important issues, but she maintains they don't put in the grunt work expected of true humanitarians. In her words, they enjoy all the privileges of royalty without many of the responsibilities. That's a serious claim. If Harry and Meghan were merely flitting from one photo op to the next, cashing in on fame while slapping their names on hollow causes, one might agree their accolades are unearned. The evidence, however, paints a different picture, one Mahdawi conspicuously omits. Consider the Archewell Foundation, the nonprofit the Sussexes founded in 2020 with the stated mission to show up and do good. Under that somewhat broad slogan, Archewell has been busy across several initiatives that target systemic social problems. Let's start with the one Mahdawi herself alluded to, the event in New York where Harry and Meghan received a Humanitarians of the Year award. The honor was bestowed by Project Healthy Minds at its World Mental Health Day Gala in recognition of the Sussexes' advocacy on youth mental health and online safety. This wasn't a random vanity award. It coincided with a concrete project the Sussexes were advancing at that very moment. At the gala, Archewell announced a major new partnership for its parents' network, teaming up with the respected nonprofit Parents Together to amplify the fight for safer social media and protections for kids online. What is the Parents Network? It's a program Archewell launched in 2022 as a private support community for families who have suffered the unthinkable, losing a child to suicide linked to social media or seeing their children harmed by online dangers. These parents, many of whom have lost teenagers to cyberbullying, dangerous viral challenges, or predator grooming online, came together through Archewell to channel grief into change. They share stories, lobby for tech accountability, and push for legislation to safeguard youth. This initiative was personally spearheaded by Harry and Meghan, who, as young parents themselves, have spoken about the urgent need to make the digital world safer for the next generation. Today, the Parents Network had grown into a national movement, hence the collaboration with Parents Together to give it more infrastructure and advocacy power. To call this effort raising awareness alone undersells it. They are effectively organizing and empowering bereaved parents to drive policy change, an endeavor that involves emotional labor and behind the scenes coordination, not just glossy magazine covers. The co executive directors of Archewell, yes, it's not just Harry and Meghan, they have a small team, noted that when the Parents Network launched, they were among the few voices highlighting the harms of social media on kids. Now, after relentless work, that conversation has entered the national stage. This is real, impactful advocacy born directly out of the Sussex's foundation. So when Project Healthy Minds chose to honor Harry and Meghan at that gala, it was precisely because of initiatives like this, initiatives that save lives and improve communities, even if they don't generate tabloid headlines. So when Mahdawi sneers that the Sussexes want the glory without the grind, she's erasing the grind entirely. The public may not see Harry shoveling gravel at the Uvalde playground site, or Meghan personally moderating a Parents Network support call late at night, but those things happened. Meghan reportedly did join private group sessions with those parents to hear their stories. In Mahdawi's imagination, Harry and Meghan just seem awfully keen to enjoy all the privileges of royalty. Yet, ironically, the couple's actual schedule over the past 3 years looks less like a royal diary of ribbon cuttings and more like the agenda of social entrepreneurs and activists. They're meeting with lawmakers on parental leave and mental health legislation, signing partnership deals with civil society groups, visiting schools and community centers, and yes, occasionally dressing up for award galas where their work is recognized, often tying in with fundraising for the causes. In a world where image often outshines substance, it's important to acknowledge when substance is actually there. You don't have to like Meghan and Harry, but to pretend they've done nothing or only seek self-aggrandizement is to ignore a trove of evidence to the contrary. Mahdawi's article certainly ignored it. By omitting any mention of what Archewell has tangibly accomplished, even the very initiative, the Parents Network, that tied into the award she mocked, she painted a misleading portrait. The result is a convenient narrative, the Sussexes as entitled dilettantes. It's a narrative that sells, but as we've just seen, it doesn't tell the full story. All of this information is public. Is it possible that Mahdawi does not know how to research or use Google? She should really learn, but this seems to be a common thing for journalists in the UK. One of the buzziest tidbits from Mahdawi's column involves a quote lifted from a Harper's Bazaar cover story about Meghan. By now, many readers have heard the anecdote. Meghan is at a friend's luxury Manhattan townhouse for an interview. A house staffer announces Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, to an otherwise empty house. Mahdawi pounced on this detail as proof that Meghan insists on being called by a title she received via marriage from an institution she seems to disdain. The whiff of hypocrisy is served up for the reader. Here's Meghan talking about writing a new chapter of her life, yet still apparently reveling in aristocratic pomp and letting everyone know she's the Duchess. It's a gotcha moment, tailor-made for tabloids and Twitter, but it crumbles under closer examination. First, let's hear the quote in full as written by the Harper's Bazaar journalist Caitlin Greenidge, rather than as spun by Mahdawi. Greenidge writes, "We're in a grand brownstone on the Upper East Side that belongs to one of Meghan's friends. When I enter, the house manager announces Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, even though we appear to be the only other two people in the house. That's it." Notably, the journalist does not ascribe intent or command to Meghan. There's no mention that Meghan demanded to be introduced that way. It's simply an observation of an awkwardly formal moment. For all we know, this could be standard operating procedure for that household staff. Perhaps the friend routinely has VIPs over, and the butler or house manager announces arrivals by formal titles as a matter of etiquette. The text doesn't say Meghan opened the door and proclaimed her own title, nor that she corrected anyone to insist on it. It simply says the house manager announced her presence with her proper title. Mahdawi takes this kernel and pops a whole bag of popcorn with it. She imagines Meghan continues to insist on being called Duchess, implying Meghan has a personal fixation with the title in private life, but nothing in the source material confirms that. This is an example of framing, choosing wording that injects assumption and judgment. A neutral framing would be, the staff still refer to her by her title, reflecting how she's treated in those circles. Mahdawi's framing, Meghan insists on it, suggests a diva-esque clinging to status. It's possible, of course, that Meghan doesn't mind the formality, but to say she insists on it goes beyond the evidence. It transforms a second-hand account of what a staffer said into a narrative about Meghan's state of mind. Mahdawi provides none of that context to her readers. She doesn't mention Meghan's hoodie and leggings outfit, which was noted in the Bazaar piece, because that would clash with the image of an entitled princess. She doesn't mention that the reason Meghan was in New York was to attend a mental health summit and award ceremony, not just to flit about being fabulous. Instead, by isolating the house manager announces Duchess line, Mahdawi lets readers' imaginations run wild, likely envisioning Meghan striding into the foyer, nose in the air, expecting the plebs to bow. This is a textbook case of confirmation bias in storytelling, selecting a detail that confirms the narrative you want. Meghan's a hypocrite who secretly loves her title, and excluding details that complicate that narrative. Mahdawi's November 2025 column did not emerge from a vacuum. It's part of a pattern in her writing about the Sussexes, one that arguably reveals a consistent bias. To put it plainly, Arwa Mahdawi has developed something of a beat in skewering Harry and Meghan. Over the past few years, she's penned multiple opinion pieces about them, nearly always negative and laced with a particular flavor of sarcasm. Analyzing these articles side by side, a clear through line emerges. Mahdawi often portrays the couple as spoiled, attention-seeking, out of touch, and not nearly as important or likable as they think they are. Let's recount a few examples. March 2023, Mahdawi wrote an article titled, "How is brand Harry and Meghan faring in the US? News just in, not good." The piece gleefully detailed how an episode of South Park and a Chris Rock comedy special both mocked the Sussexes and cited a questionable Newsweek poll showing their approval ratings tanking even below Prince Andrew in the US, rather than question whether comparing H&M to an accused sex offender in a poll is an apples to oranges situation. She herself noted many Americans hardly know who Andrew is. Mahdawi highlighted it to underline how far the Sussexes had fallen in public esteem. Her tone was unmistakably smug. She chastised their never-ending pity me please performance and dismissed their grievances about racism and mistreatment as essentially a rich couple whining because they didn't get a big enough slice of the born with privilege pie. Empathy was in short supply. Perhaps the most telling line was her advice to them. You want some credibility? Give up your stupid titles. Sound familiar? The fixation on titles as the ultimate litmus test of their integrity was already front and center. July 2024, Mahdawi again took aim, this time with a piece mockingly titled, "Harry is the divisive Duke and Meghan is making jam. Can the Sussexes escape their flop era?" The very framing drips with snark. Harry's a divisive figure. Meghan is making jam. This jab referred to Meghan's new California-based business venture, teased to involve gourmet foods like marmalade. Mahdawi joked that when life gives Meghan lemons, she makes luxury lemon marmalade and sells it to your celebrity friends. The article then pivoted to Harry's nomination for a 2024 ESPY award, the Pat Tillman Award for Service, for his Invictus Games work. Rather than focus on the merits of Harry's veteran support work, Invictus has widely been praised as a genuinely positive legacy. Mahdawi amplified the backlash to his nomination. She quoted Pat Tillman's own mother, calling Harry a controversial and divisive individual who didn't deserve the honor. She noted a petition against Harry receiving the award had gathered tens of thousands of signatures. In short, she scoured for voices that would undercut Harry's achievement and lend credence to the idea that America, not just the UK, was turning on him. By the end, she pronounced that the novelty of the Sussexes had worn off and that their brand in the US was flailing, adding a final sardonic barb. That rumor has it Meghan might launch a rosé wine next. Perhaps Harry can wash the criticism down with that. The tone is more tabloid than broadsheet, effectively rubbing salt in the wound. One might wonder, why does this matter? After all, columnists are paid to have a point of view. Mahdawi has every right to dislike how Harry and Meghan conduct themselves. And satire or sharp criticism is fair game for public figures. But the reason we're dissecting her pattern is to address bias and one-sidedness. The danger with a steady drumbeat of negative framing is that it can cross into agenda territory rather than balanced commentary. Take the March 2023 piece. Mahdawi quotes Chris Rock's dismissal of Meghan's racism claims. That wasn't racism, it was just in-law behavior, Rock joked, without any counterpoint. In fact, Mahdawi seemed to present Rock's and South Park's ridicule as a justified comeuppance. She cheered on the pylon. That suggests a personal animus coloring the analysis. Some readers and media watchers have noticed this slant. The fan site Celebici, for instance, slammed Mahdawi's coverage as filled with venom and regurgitating right-wing lies and talking points about the Sussexes. That's a harsh assessment, but not entirely out of left field. On issues of race and gender, Mahdawi is usually a progressive voice. She often champions women and calls out racism in other contexts, so it's somewhat jarring that when it comes to Meghan, a woman of color who faced a clear racist undertone in press attacks, Mahdawi's tone has often been dismissive or minimizing of that element. What we see in Mahdawi's body of work is a kind of one-sided storytelling, focusing relentlessly on the Sussexes' perceived flaws, failures, and mock-worthy moments, while routinely omitting or downplaying context that might garner sympathy for them. It's fair for her to critique their Netflix documentary as oversharing, or to satirize the friction between their anti-establishment rhetoric and their continued trappings of wealth. Those are valid angles. But when every piece strikes the same note, they're hypocrites, they're annoying, we're all sick of them. One starts to question whether the columnist has lost perspective or is pursuing a personal vendetta at the expense of fairness. This pattern matters because The Guardian is a widely respected outlet. Readers might take Mahdawi's quips at face value, not realizing how selectively curated the facts are in her columns. It contributes to a broader narrative, very prevalent in UK media, that frames Meghan and Harry as uniquely terrible, worse than other royals, deserving of endless scorn. Which brings us to the question of double standards and selective outrage. Why are Harry and Meghan so harshly judged for things others are indulged in? Mahdawi isn't solely responsible for that, of course, but her writing exemplifies it.
X-ray! X-ray! Read all about it! The dress was stolen. Divorce papers will be signed in a month. Or a year. Or two. Oh, look, another headline spinning like a circus wheel. They flew across the ocean just to call a parfait a big ordeal. A pop-up shop becomes a saga, a dress becomes a crime. They'll turn any morning into scandal number 9. A dress, a jar of honey, a parfait in a child's hand. They twist it into scandal like only tabloids can. and honey jars, a festive bow, they twist it all. You know how tabloids go. Every day's a new disaster. Oh, the drama never ends. They create, invent, imagine these stories with the ever-reliable royal sources, a close friend or Royals fans. They never have names or faces. They're like dragons and unicorns. But we're here laughing through the madness, calling out each wild charade, because truth stands strong when the headlines fade. So let them shout their stories, we'll answer with the light. Welcome to the place where we get it right.
To fully understand the treatment of Meghan Sussex in Mahdawi's articles and beyond, we have to talk about the elephants in the room: race and class. The British media and segments of the public influenced by it have reacted to Meghan's presence in the royal story in ways that can't be separated from her identity as a biracial, self-made American woman. Mahdawi's column gave a nod, only in passing, to the fact Meghan was given a terrible time by the royals and the British press. That's putting it mildly. From the moment Meghan and Harry's relationship went public in 2016, a portion of the British press engaged in what can only be described as racially charged harassment. Harry himself said in a 2019 statement that the media had racial undertones in coverage of Meghan from day one. This isn't imaginary. The receipts are plentiful. For example, one of the first big stories the Daily Mail ran about Meghan's background carried the headline, "Harry's girl is almost straight out of Compton," going on to describe her mother's African-American neighborhood in crude terms. The phrase "straight out of Compton," aside from referencing a famous hip-hop album, was a dog whistle implying Meghan came from a gang-infested low-class black area. In reality, she did not. She was raised in a leafy middle-class part of Los Angeles and was a successful actress. Another Mail article around the same time referred to Meghan's exotic DNA, a dehumanizing way to highlight her mixed race. No British royal bride in history had been written about in those terms. Yet portions of the press doubled down, with one infamous moment coming when the Society of Editors, a media industry body, issued a statement in 2021 flatly denying that UK media coverage of Meghan was racist at all. That claim was so absurd that it caused a revolt. More than 160 journalists of color in Britain signed an open letter calling the denial laughable and an industry in denial, explicitly citing those Compton and exotic headlines as proof of the discriminatory treatment. Why bring this up in context of Mahdawi's critique? Because any commentary on Meghan that fails to acknowledge this backdrop, even implicitly, is missing a huge piece of the puzzle. When Mahdawi or others slam Meghan for playing victim or suggest her treatment wasn't that bad, it raises eyebrows. Are we forgetting what actually transpired? The reason Harry and Meghan even got to the point of leaving was tied to the ugliness of this coverage and lack of institutional support. Race was a significant factor in why the attacks were so virulent. There was an undercurrent of, "She's not one of us," not just as an American or an actress, but as a black woman entering a very old, very white institution. This isn't conjecture. Even Harry and Meghan's Netflix docuseries provided examples of internal emails where palace staff discussed colonial-era racist imagery used in coverage and how Harry was beside himself trying to get the palace to fight it. The British class system also reared its head. Meghan's independence, having had a career, a voice, and not being aristocratic by birth, rubbed some the wrong way. Parts of the UK press, which often serve as mouthpieces for upper class anxieties, portrayed her as uncouth, pushy, social climbing. She was too Hollywood or didn't know her place. Remember the absurd critiques about Meghan closing her own car door, praised by some as down to earth, weirdly criticized by others as breaking protocol? Or the infamous narrative that she made Kate cry over bridesmaid dresses, a one-sided story that persisted until Meghan set the record straight that actually she had cried and Kate later apologized. The truth didn't matter. The Meghan made Kate cry story fed a convenient stereotype of the difficult black woman making the innocent white princess upset. It was tabloid gold. No surprise, Mahdawi's fellow Guardian columnist Zoe Williams even wrote in 2018 that Meghan was being cast as Duchess difficult in a way that echoes the racist, angry black woman trope. So, what does this mean for how we read columns like Mahdawi's? It means we should recognize the undercurrents at play. When she jabs that the Sussexes want all the privileges without responsibility, it taps into an old stereotype of minorities or outsiders who are entitled, a loaded word in Britain when used against someone seen as not quite of the establishment. When she calls Harry divisive by uncritically quoting those who say so, it echoes the narrative that he caused a rift by speaking about racism, rather than the racism causing the rift. When she highlights voices that tell them to shut up, it resonates with those who always felt Meghan should have just stayed silent and smiling, no matter what treatment she received. In the end, discussing race and class in this context isn't about accusing every Sussex critic of bigotry. It's about acknowledging that the playing field was never level for Meghan, and any analysis that pretends it was, or that omits how vicious the media campaign against her was, is inherently skewed. This is why it's so crucial for media consumers to have literacy about bias. We can't divorce Mahdawi's words from the larger media milieu. Her columns don't exist in isolation. They reinforce and are reinforced by a broader tabloid and online narrative that has often been fueled by racism, misogyny, and classism, even if couched in legitimate criticism. After examining all this, the factual omissions, the misleading frames, the patterns of bias, the double standards, and the deeper social currents, we come to a simple but vital conclusion. Facts and fairness matter, especially in highly charged stories like that of Harry and Meghan. And it's up to us, as readers and viewers, to insist on a higher standard from those who inform us. Arwa Mahdawi's column is just one piece of a vast media puzzle, but it's emblematic of how even a witty, educated writer can fall into the trap of reinforcing misconceptions. By correcting the record here, we're not saying Harry and Meghan are beyond criticism. They are human, they have their flaws, and have made strategic errors in their public journey, but any criticism of them, or anyone, should be rooted in what's true and relevant, not what's catchy or convenient. At the end of Mahdawi's article, she quipped she can think of a few words for people like Harry and Meghan, and it's not Duchess or Duke. Perhaps she meant frauds or phonies or who knows. But after this exploration, a few different words come to my mind, words for commentators who engage in skewed takedowns, do better, as in, let's do better than snarky hit pieces that leave out half the story. Let's do better than feeding a frenzy without full context. Let's do better for the audience who deserves the truth, not just a gratifying dunk. The saga of Harry and Meghan has become a litmus test for media literacy. It challenges us to discern reality from perception and to demand fairness even for figures who polarize. You don't have to like the Sussexes to recognize when criticism of them tips into disproportion or distortion. In fact, holding your own side, be it the media you favor or the narratives you've believed, accountable is the hallmark of true critical thinking. So, as we close, consider this a call to action for all of us. Let's remember why facts and fairness matter. They matter because real people are affected by the stories told about them. Even famous people can be deeply harmed by unfair portrayal. They matter because we are affected by the stories we consume. Our opinions, our biases, even our votes can be swayed by misinformation or slanted framing. And they matter because a healthy society relies on honest discourse. When we let distortions slide just because they target someone unpopular, we erode the overall standard of truth. Today, it might be Meghan. Tomorrow, it could be someone or something you care about, subjected to a distorted media narrative. In the end, beyond royals and titles and awards, this is about media literacy. It's about reading between the lines and not letting outrage be canned and served to you without inspection. It's about recognizing when a story is being used to push buttons and choosing to respond with curiosity instead of just anger. Let us consider, then, the grand irony of Ms. Mahdawi's position. A woman who built a career flaying institutions for their gatekeeping, posturing, and hypocrisy now steps into the pulpit to wag her finger at a biracial duchess for failing to sufficiently abase herself before the same system that tried to swallow her whole. One might have expected more from someone who's made her name calling out tokenism, corporate performativity, and patriarchal pieties. But here, the satire turns cannibal, and her pen is aimed not at empire or establishment, but at two people who dared to step off the royal plinth and tell their story in their own words. It's the columnist as courtier, ensuring that even in exile, Meghan Sussex knows her place. How very progressive. If this is what passes for subversion now, joining the well-heeled chorus of Sussex detractors to flog a woman for the crime of existing in public with dignity, then we have mistaken cleverness for conscience and column inches for moral weight. Ms. Mahdawi may style herself as a slayer of power structures, but here she is, simply another scribe keeping the myths tidy.
One heart can light a fire. One hand can lift the day. You don't need a crown to matter. Just show up anyway. We rise for the voiceless. We rise for the truth. We stand for each other. We fight for the future. We believe in you. No throne, no fame, no gold, just courage in our soul. The world begins to heal when love becomes our goal. Show up, do good, that's how the fire starts. One light, one voice, one beating heart. Be kind, be brave, let the fear fall away. You are the change we need today. We showed up and did good. Now join us and let's change the world. Show up, do good, every voice, every hand. We are builders of a better land. Hope is our song, love is our guide. Together we rise, together we shine. We don't need permission, no spotlight or stage.
Hello, everyone. Hello, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Whether you've got a home presently packed with people, or you're just taking it easy and relaxing and enjoying your own solitude and having that opportunity to just sort of meditate and be grateful for all the wonderful things that we have, because there's so much for us to be grateful for. So much. So happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you. And what a wonderful, extraordinary day I wish you all. So celebrate it the way you want to. And for those who are not celebrating Thanksgiving, listen, there's still tons of things we have, to give thanks for. So whether you're not in the US, you're somewhere else, um, you know, thanks Thanksgiving is almost like every day. You wake up, you open your eyes, you're able to function. It's a thank you very much, let me tell you. So I hope wherever you are, however you're celebrating Thanksgiving or not, that it is a joyful one, a joyful, joyful one. And even though there might be things that may, you know, hurt or pain or uncomfort, any of that stuff, that the joy, the happiness, the love will be able to shine even brighter than any of the other stuff. Okay? Um, some of you might have noticed, maybe not. I was a little bit MIA this past week. I was out of the country. Um, had to go do some personal stuff, um, and accompany my mom. So sorry, it was sort of like a last minute thing, and it had to get done. So, and I was we were busy, busy, busy. By the time get back and you're able to do anything, I was just exhausted. But I hope you enjoyed the episode today. I will be back later today with a proper Thanksgiving message and so on. I'm going to keep it short. So this is it. This is it. I really hope that, however, you are celebrating it, to remember to just take deep breath. If you've got the entire family or people over or people you've invited over to celebrate with you, listen, nothing is worth you getting upset over. Nothing. Not a thing. Take deep breath. Deep breath. Don't let anyone hook you into nonsense, okay? Don't get into their hook and be hooked in. Just take a deep breath and just say thank you. Thank you for all the wonderful things, the wonderful things that you're blessed with. We're blessed with so much, so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you all. All right, I'm going to let you go. I'll speak with you folks later today. All right, take care. Mwah.